Okay, let's talk about something we do every single day, often without even thinking about it: making agreements. From the terms and conditions you scroll past to that handshake deal you made, our lives are built on contracts. But what really makes an agreement legally solid? Today, we're diving into the secret ingredient, what the law calls free consent.
You know that feeling, right? That little pit in your stomach right after you sign on the dotted line, and you're just hit with this wave of regret. Did I just make a huge mistake? Well, guess what? That feeling you get, it's not just you being paranoid. In fact, the law is right there with you. It basically says, hang on, not all agreements are the same. There are actual legal safeguards built in to make sure that a deal is only a deal if everyone involved is genuinely on board. As we're about to see, not every yes is actually a real yes in the eyes of the law.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of the matter: consent. This isn't just about nodding your head or signing your name. Legally, for consent to be real, there has to be what's called a meeting of minds. That means everyone involved has to agree on the exact same thing, in the exact same way. If that doesn't happen, the whole agreement could just, well, crumble. So, what are the things that can actually torpedo a contract? The law highlights 5 very specific situations that can make your consent unfree, basically tainting the entire agreement right from the very start. Let's get into them. Okay, so take a look at this chart. This is going to be our roadmap for this whole discussion. It lays out the 5 big things that can get in the way of a valid contract. We're going to walk through each one, from physical threats all the way to honest-to-goodness misunderstandings, and see exactly how they can cause a deal to fall apart. And here's the crucial part. If your consent wasn't freely given because of one of these reasons, the contract becomes voidable. Now, what does that mean? Think of it like the law hands you, the person who was wronged, a big red cancel button. The other person can't press it. Only you have the power to decide, do I go through with this deal or do I hit cancel and walk away? The choice is yours. So let's kick things off with the heavy hitters: pressure and influence. These first two are all about being pushed into an agreement against your will. Now, they might sound kind of similar, but in the legal world, the difference between them is absolutely massive.
Coercion is the easy one to picture. It's the classic gun to your head scenario, physical force, or the threat of it. It's blatant. But undue influence, that's a whole different ballgame. It's way more subtle. It's about psychological or moral pressure. This happens when someone uses a position of trust, like a doctor with a patient, or a spiritual advisor with a follower, to manipulate you into a deal that isn't fair.
And if you think that sounds a little abstract, check out this real-world case. A woman was convinced by her spiritual guru to sign over all of her property to him, supposedly to guarantee her a good spot in the afterlife. The court stepped in and said, nope, that wasn't a real gift. That was a classic case of someone abusing a position of trust. That's undue influence. Okay, so we've talked about being pressured, but what happens when the problem isn't pressure, but the information you're being given is just flat out wrong? Well, that leads us to our next 2 contract breakers: fraud and misrepresentation. So just think about this for a second. What's the real line between someone telling you a deliberate, calculated lie and someone who just gives you some bad info because they genuinely thought it was true? In the eyes of the law, that line is everything. It really just boils down to one single powerful word: intent. Was there an intention to deceive you? If yes, that's fraud. If no, if the person honestly believed what they were telling you was true, that's misrepresentation. And this distinction is huge because if it's fraud, you can usually sue for damages. With an innocent misrepresentation, you can't. Let me give you a really vivid example to make this stick. A horse dealer has a horse with a cracked hoof. He knows about it, and he cleverly fills it in with something to hide the crack from a potential buyer. See, that's not an honest mistake. That is an active, deliberate attempt to hide a defect and deceive someone. That is textbook fraud. All right, so we've covered being pressured and being lied to. Now for our 5th and final factor, and honestly, this one can sometimes be the trickiest to wrap your head around. What happens when one, or maybe even both of you, are just mistaken about something fundamental? So when the law talks about a mistake, it's actually pretty specific. It breaks mistakes down into a few different types. But for our purposes, there's one particular kind of mistake that is so fundamental, it can make a contract completely invalid from the get-go.
And that key concept is called a bilateral mistake. Bi, of course, meaning two. This is what happens when both parties are mistaken about a really essential fact of the deal. The key thing here is that nobody is trying to trick anybody. It's just a pure, simple, and mutual misunderstanding.
This example makes it super clear. Let's say A agrees to sell B his car. Sounds simple. But A owns two cars, a red one and a blue one. A is thinking he's selling the red car, but B thinks he's buying the blue one. Do you see the problem? Their minds never actually met. They didn't agree on the same thing. And in this case, the contract isn't just voidable, it's void. It's as if it never even existed in the first place.
Whew. Okay, so we've walked through the 5 big contract breakers. So let's bring it all home. What does all of this actually mean for you the next time you've got a document in front of you and a pen in your hand? Why does this matter? Well, it really comes down to these 3 things. First, remember that the goal of any real agreement is a genuine meeting of minds. Second, keep your antenna up for those big 5 red flags we just talked about. And third, and this is the most empowering part, know your rights. If your consent wasn't freely given, the power is often in your hands to void that contract. You are not trapped.
So I'll leave you with this question. The next time you're about to sign something, think about this. You're not just putting your name on a piece of paper. You're supposed to be entering into a fair, transparent meeting of minds. Now that you know the rules, will you read that next contract just a little bit differently?